I am absolutely stunned that this tank is even a thing in World of Tanks. It is, of course, a Chinese version of an American tank capable of being able to deal a ton of damage whilst also carry your team in a light tank. Yes, that's a light tank being able to carry. And of course, we are looking at a vehicle that was sold recently. It's a super cheap premium tank. It is only 6,500 gold to pick this tank up at full price, and it was available in the store for like half price or something like that, which allowed you to pick it up for in the region of about 3,500 gold for a tier 8 premium light tank from the Chinese line. And this is why we want to showcase it, because not only are you able to have a look at this tank, see what it's all about, maybe you've got it, maybe you haven't, but if you haven't got it, you'll at least find out what this tank is good at, how it can be taken advantage of, and hopefully you won't be able to be a bot like we're going to deal with in some of these games. So how do you make this tank work? Well, we've got to first understand about the tank. How is this tank special? It's a Chinese one, you know, about the Chinese meta in that they get ammo-racked a hell of a lot more than any other vehicle in the game. Yes, it's Chinese, it has exactly that as well, but it does have this really good combination of playing almost like a medium and a light tank. It is an M41 Walker Bulldog after all, but a Chinese version that has a slightly different main armament, allowing you to do way more in every single one of your games than maybe you would see with the traditional Bulldog, and that is because it has an increased rate of fire. This tank has 170 damage per shell, and it has 192 damage on its or penetration on its standard rounds, 227 on the premium, and it can definitely use that quite effectively because it's fast enough to get around and of course make sure that you're coming up against the rear, the sides, the back of tanks, and really make it work quite nicely. And when you're seeing this thing just pace around the battlefield, being able to tear apart opponents, you're probably wondering how you can kind of deal with it and counter it. And there's a few different ways. Obviously, being a light tank, it has no armor, so I mean, if you can hit it, it's going to be great. But that doesn't take a genius. That is not really the key weak point of this vehicle, in that, yeah, it is it's very easy to track a tank like this because it has huge tracks. There we go. First kind of negative about the vehicle, I guess, is that it isn't a small light tank. It's definitely no ELC even 90 or the Vanguard, if you know what they are, the tiny French light tank at tier 8. It isn't one of those. It's also not an autoloader, so it can't have that huge damage potential to kind of wave you off if you do decide to, you know, go towards it and stuff like that. Its damage per minute is also not the greatest in the world, but it is actually pretty good. So you definitely don't want to be letting this thing come up from behind you and constantly hit you, because as you're seeing here, it reloads in like 3.1 seconds, and with 170 damage per shell, it's able to reach about 2,500 to 2,700 damage per minute, making it almost the same as what a base value tier 10 medium would be able to output. Now, you do have a lot less damage per shell and therefore less penetration, and of course not able to realistically you know, deal as much damage as you might have with a 390 alpha damage tank, but you're able to use that mobility and stuff to get around people, and you're going to have a way better time when you do that. So this tank, really fun. I was surprised how good it actually was, considering, you know, it's another Bulldog that has a smaller gun, and I thought it's probably just going to get pumped by absolutely everything you're playing up against, but it really did surprise me. It feels really nice to play, and it looks really cool as well, which I mean, it doesn't help you in the game, but I mean, it looks cool, it's interesting to play, and when you have a combination of both of those, you feel like you can you know, make an impact in the game, and this tank definitely can. But there are, you know, limitations, as we've spoken about. The good thing about this tank, though, as we've mentioned, is the speed. 65 kilometers an hour make this one of the faster light tanks in the game. Not the fastest by any means, but certainly able to shift around the map, especially considering its size. You'd expect this tank to be a lot slower than what it actually is, and It may not have the best power to weight ratio, and what I mean by that is that it's not going to accelerate as fast as some other light tanks, but when it gets up to top speed, considering the damage and stuff like that, the accuracy as well being pretty good on this vehicle too, you can really make it work quite nicely. And you can see me here going in after the Carnarvon here, and the problem is when you know, you do go in and stuff like that, you have to rely a little bit on your team that can help pack a punch against these opponents, because as I said, you don't have the best damage per minute. And you can see me here coming in, making a nuisance of myself against the Carnarvon, who really doesn't have much to kind of go on in this game. And there you go, he gets taken out pretty quickly. We've been able to help the team out. But with only 424 hit points left on our tank, we've dealt 2,800 damage. But we also now have a Paladin on full health with a very, very good damage per minute that is now making his way towards us. But hopefully we can be able to help him out. The Paladin rams our teammate. We hit our teammate, which is just fantastic. He then hits us whilst on the move, swinging his turret around. I'm not that surprised. And then decides to get me rather than the guy in front of him, which I guess is a good play. But then he rams the Guardian, who takes both of us out. And yeah, the end of the game, not so great, but I mean, picking up 3,000 damage in a very fast game where the enemy team just basically dominated our team isn't a bad result in a light tank for sure. But let's have a look at another gameplay where we can see a little bit of something else and why this tank is one of the ones I've really enjoyed playing, and we were only really stopped in this next game by the game itself. And so obviously starting off on El Haloof, we have a couple of spots actually I want to showcase to you guys because it can be used really nicely, especially in a light tank. And there's a few different things that you might want to know about playing light tanks on El Haloof. If you're trying to counter light tanks on El Haloof, you might want to know where some of the more educated players, some of the better players, some of the more experienced players will take their light tanks as opposed to you know, your bog standard light tank player who's probably played, you know, a couple thousand games in total and they're playing light tanks on this map. Now most people will take their light tank down into G7 and kind of the hill area that you see, that medium that's first been spotted in this game. But when you do that, you can find yourself feeling like you're at a big risk when it comes to the enemy team potentially just YOLOing you. So I much prefer coming over here. You can get a lot of free shots into opponents. We could have been on 2 free shots already, but unfortunately missing out on the IS earlier, as well as then missing the IS again with that shell. So we could have potentially had 3 shots already and we didn't even get spotted. Which is, yeah, I mean, pretty disgusting when you think about it, considering how close we are to the enemy team. But the brilliant thing again about this tank is you see me here dealing with the T25/2. That tank has a reasonable rate of fire, but it's still got nothing in comparison to what we are kind of able to do. Now I get hit in the back here. I am somewhat triggered about how the, you know, 10 tanks that sat in the base have not spotted the 1 tank being able to push entirely up towards them. But I guess, you know, maybe they just didn't want to actually spot anyone that could get into a really annoying position for the team. But in coming over here, we do actually manage to find a couple shots to regain some of that health that we lost to the Dragon. But granted that he's pushed down and out of the way, we can hopefully move into a better position. And of course we get snapped by the Absolution. This game is going from bad to worse as everyone seems to be just hitting me. But, you know, we can move, and this tank definitely isn't down and out when it takes a bit of damage. You have to play a little bit differently when you do take damage in light tanks, but coming into this sort of location's quite easy to do. And you can see here the enemy T25/2 is trying to move up into position as well, but we can't really hit him. The top guard on that tank is not actually an actual damage area, so you've got to be a little bit wary of that. The enemy Iron Rain is a super dangerous tank to be in this game right now, and so we need to get him out, otherwise he's going to pump our team. But luckily we have an autoloader in the T69 who gets quite a few shots into him, and we also get a couple of shots as well, which is absolutely fine. We removed one of the most dangerous, and therefore we can kind of move on in this game. But I am hesitant to move towards the T25/2 because we don't actually know what's going to be over on the enemy side, and it actually turns out being a tank destroyer. And maybe we'll find out how to take that guy out, but he does have a relatively low amount of hit points because he's only a tier 6. and he also doesn't have the best gun depression, is not very flexible, so hopefully we can outflex him, I guess, whilst he's on the ridgeline, and of course with us having a lot more speed. Now I'm trying to hit this absolution. When you're in games in light tanks, trying to find your next target or planning ahead is like one of the biggest things that you can do. And most normal light tank players just kind of roll with it. They just YOLO in, they try and get damage here and there when they're just kind of running around the map full speed the entire time. But actually when you see a proper light tank player, they know exactly when they need to spot and when they need to push and when they need to actually use their hit points or deal damage. And right now it's the damage phase where we really need to get rid of some of these guys because there's not a whole lot of teammates over here, and if we don't try and help out our team, they're going to get overrun, and then yeah, we're going to end up losing. Luckily that doesn't happen, and our team finished them all off with a little bit of help from myself, but definitely not just me. But at this point in the game it's still fairly even. I mean, we're probably going to win, but it's definitely by no means an easy win. Because, you know, their enemy team could be doing some actual decent things, and you can see me here just trying to get this Panther M10 who has actually moved. I thought I might attract him, maybe we could get another one in there, but we don't really know at this point. And yeah, as you're seeing, the enemy AMX-12T still in the base. I'm not entirely sure why he's actually moved there. I am hoping that our team will actually spot, but the Panther M10's move further back, which is justified. It stops him from being hit by people like me, and therefore now we have to do something else. And do something else we're going to try and do. And if you have any questions about like light tanks in general, maybe you want to find out how to play light tanks a little bit better, maybe you just want to know how to stop them from YOLOing you, because it is really easy. People make a meal of dealing with light tanks in the game, primarily because they can't actually aim or anything at people that are traveling more than 30 kilometers an hour in the game, which comes with experience and just learning how to actually aim, and often they'll just avoid shooting at things that are moving, and that is how I pick up a ton of damage when other people just avoid doing anything like that. Now what we do here is we track the T28 HTC. I go for another tracking shot, but we have to deal with the Barask, otherwise we're going to get taken out, and luckily our team helped with the T28 HTC, but it does leave us on a reasonably bad situation with only 167 hit points left. And oh no, an even worse situation. The Falcon T92 hits us, who is in our base, literally surrounded by our team. I don't even know how he's managed to get there or why he's managed to get there, but apparently he has. And yeah, not quite sure what the team have been doing in the base, but I almost can guarantee that they've done a hell of a lot less damage than what we've done. So with 2,500 damage under my belt, not particularly the most outrageous game that you're ever going to see, but we've got a little bit more left in this one, and hopefully we can start dealing some damage to some more opponents. And here you go, easy damage as you like, just very nice to be able to deal damage to these the enemy light tank, and hopefully get into a bit of a more safe position as we move over here. But our team have decided to jump into the Royal Free Cap Circle, which, yeah, I mean, debatable. But I guess they are wanting a win, and given the fact that, you know, our team have somehow thrown away a ton of vehicles, I'm kind of happy with that they're in the Cap Circle right now, because I don't want to lose a game where we've literally dominated on one flank and our team have sat in the base. Literally have no idea why people do it on this map, staying in base for so long. It can be a decent strategy at the beginning, but then you have to move if you want to do anything. Otherwise you're going to be sat there for the whole game, only dealing damage for like a minute of the game. And of course, when you've only got a minute's worth of actual potential damage, you're not going to have any crazy results. And we pick up not the most outrageous result, 3,383 damage, 5 enemies taken out in a light tank playing as a more aggressive vehicle than a lot of the heavy tanks and mediums in this game. So hopefully that gives you an indication of what this tank can do, both in the first game and the second. There is some limitations, and I really am stunned with how this tank performed. If you have any questions about it, if you hate this tank, if you love it, let me know in the comments, and make sure that if you are interested in watching more videos, you have a look at the playlist on screen right now, and I'll see you there.